Lena and Marcus never imagined their divorce would become a nightmare. What began as quiet separation turned into something far darker, an unseen presence that followed them, whispered their secrets, and haunted every corner of the life they once shared. They thought leaving the house would end it. But some things don't stay behind. Some things wait and watch. I remember the first night I truly felt it. The house had changed in a way I couldn't explain. I had lived here for years, shared it with someone I once loved, but now it felt foreign, almost hostile. The divorce papers were still on the kitchen counter, their crisp edges now curling as if mocking me for every decision I had made. I had expected sadness, relief, maybe even freedom, but instead there was this oppressive weight pressing down, an invisible presence that seemed to move just behind my vision. I tried to convince myself it was stress, the loneliness, the anxiety twisting my mind, but deep down, I knew it was more. The house creaked in ways it never had before. Floors groaned under invisible footsteps. Doors that had been shut tightly during the day now swung open at night. Shadows stretched across the walls in unnatural shapes, and I could swear they sometimes moved against the flow of light. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the air was settling, maybe I had left a window open, but the unease gnawed at me, making my chest tight, my hands clammy. I stopped sleeping. Every sound startled me. The drip of the faucet, the wind brushing against the windows, the faint scratching at the back door. It all seemed amplified, sinister. One night I awoke to the smell of perfume, sweet and heavy, filling the room. I froze, my heart hammering. No one lived with me now. My ex had moved out weeks ago. I told myself it was my imagination, memories of a life I had lost, mixing with fear. But the smell didn't fade. It lingered, curling around me, clinging to my hair and clothes as if the air itself had trapped it there. My body refused to relax. I lay in bed, listening to the house, counting each creak, each groan, each whispering breath that seemed too deliberate to be random. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. I had heard them before, but this time they were real, close, moving up the stairs, directly outside my bedroom door. I dared not move. My mind raced with thoughts of intrusion, of violence, of the past finally catching up to me in the most terrifying way. I strained to hear, my ears catching the faintest scrape of nails or perhaps the soft thud of someone pacing. And then just as suddenly as they had started, the sound stopped. Silence. But the silence was worse, charged with expectation, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching a blanket, listening to the walls, counting the seconds, counting the heartbeats. I thought about leaving, running to a friend's house, escaping the oppressive atmosphere. But something rooted me to that room. Something unseen was watching, waiting, and I felt it in the pit of my stomach. I realized with cold clarity that I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. The house had become a trap, a living thing, and I was its prey. And in that moment, as the moonlight cast shifting shadows across the floor, I understood the terrifying truth. I was no longer alone, and the things sharing my home had no intention of ever leaving. The days that followed felt like living in a fog of dread. I tried to keep myself busy, running errands, meeting friends, anything to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the house. But even when I was out, a part of me felt tethered to it, as if some invisible cord pulled at my chest, reminding me that the house, and whatever had taken residence inside it, was always there. Every time I returned, the sense of being watched grew heavier, almost unbearable. The air inside felt thicker, colder, as though it carried the weight of my own fear back to me. I started noticing small things at first. A cup that had been on the counter now sat on the table, turned upside down. My keys, carefully placed in a bowl by the door, vanished and reappeared on the kitchen floor. At first, I told myself it was me, absent-minded, distracted by the chaos of my life, but the changes became more unsettling. Photos on the wall shifted slightly, tilting as if someone had been peering at them. Clothes in my closet rearranged themselves in patterns I didn't recognize. Even the air seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, pressing against my skin, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. One evening, I was in the living room trying to read, but I couldn't focus. The shadows along the walls seemed to thicken, stretching and curling like black smoke, moving independently of the light. I felt eyes on me, invisible but tangible, following my every motion. The sensation of being watched made my stomach churn. I got up to check the windows, convinced someone had broken in, but they were all locked tight. There was no one outside. Then I heard it, a soft creaking coming from the bedroom. My heart stopped. I told myself to stay calm, that maybe it was the house settling, but the sound grew louder, deliberate, purposeful. The closet door in the bedroom slowly swung open, just a fraction, and I could feel the air shift, a cold draft brushing against my ankle. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe, frozen by the awareness that something was standing there, waiting, observing. And then I saw it. Not clearly at first, just a shape, a shadow at the edge of the curtain, perfectly still. It mirrored me, my height, my stance, but it didn't move like a human. It felt wrong, unnatural. My pulse raced, but my feet refused to carry me out of the room. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The shadow lingered for a long moment, and then it vanished. I spun around, heart hammering, only to find the room empty, silent, yet somehow heavier, darker than before. I slept very little that night, perched on the edge of the couch, lights on, doors locked. I knew deep down that I wasn't safe. The house had become alive with something I couldn't name, something that didn't belong to me, something that had been waiting for me to be alone. And the worst part, I knew it wasn't finished. Whatever it wasn't going away. Not now, not ever. I started avoiding the house entirely. I stayed at friends' apartments, cafes, even the lobby of my office building just to escape the suffocating presence that had claimed my home. But no matter where I went, I couldn't escape it. The dread followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. My phone began to betray me as well. Unknown numbers called constantly, and when I answered, there was nothing but heavy breathing, faint laughter, and that subtle, taunting pause before a click on the other end. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was harassment, maybe a cruel joke, but my gut screamed that this was connected to the house, to the presence that had taken root in my life. Eventually, I forced myself to return for a few things I had left behind. I stepped through the doorway with caution, expecting chaos or movement, but the house was eerily still, almost sterile. The living room looked untouched, the furniture in perfect order. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt like it had been waiting, anticipating my arrival. I moved through the room slowly, every step calculated, listening to the faint creaks and groans of the floorboards beneath me. The kitchen was immaculate, but the air carried that same perfume I had smelled months ago, faint but unmistakable, curling around me, pressing against my senses. When I entered the bedroom, my chest tightened. The bed was made perfectly, sheets crisp, pillows fluffed, as if someone had just left it. My husband's cologne lingered faintly in the air, even though I knew he had been gone for weeks. I could feel the presence then, the weight of it leaning close just behind me, pressing my heart into my chest. I turned slowly, but there was nothing. No figure, no shadow, only the eerie stillness of the room. And yet, the hairs on my neck stood on end. My skin prickled. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the closet door, slightly ajar, an invitation I didn't want but couldn't resist noticing. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, but that rationality was slipping. The shadows seemed thicker here, heavier, almost alive, curling in corners and behind furniture in ways that defied logic. And then I felt it, a breath on my neck. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was rooted in place by sheer terror. The air thickened, and I could feel something brushing against my arm, brushing lightly, deliberately. It was faint, almost tender, yet the malevolence behind it made my stomach twist. When I finally spun around, nothing was there. But the bed was different. On the sheets, an indentation that wasn't mine remained, as if someone had just been lying there. And on the pillow, pressed faintly into the fabric, I saw the shape of lips, a mouth forming a silent whisper. "You'll never leave." I stumbled back, heart hammering, and fled the room. Every instinct screamed that whatever haunted this house wasn't just a presence, it was patient, aware, and waiting for the moment I let my guard down. I realized with a chill that leaving wouldn't be as simple as walking out the door. I tried to convince myself that staying away from the house would make everything better, but even that distance couldn't protect me. Every memory of the place felt like a trap pulling me back. The walls, the floors, the air itself, they had imprinted on me, and I could feel their influence everywhere I went. Friends tried to distract me, invite me out, and I wanted to accept. I really did. But the feeling of being tethered, of being watched, never left. My phone would vibrate at odd hours with messages I didn't remember sending. I would glance at my reflection in the mirror and catch glimpses of shadows that shouldn't have been there, and I began to wonder if the presence had followed me, if it had somehow learned to exist outside the house. Eventually, I forced myself back. There were things I couldn't abandon. Photographs, keepsakes, even trivial items. But as I approached, the house felt alive, breathing, waiting. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. Everything looked normal, unnervingly so. Dust coated the surfaces, the furniture sat in its usual places, and sunlight streamed in through the windows, harmless and ordinary. But as soon as I crossed the threshold, the air shifted. The familiar heaviness pressed down on my chest. The temperature dropped. I could feel eyes on me, even though the house appeared empty. I moved cautiously through each room. Nothing seemed out of place at first, but then I noticed it. The photographs on the walls. Family photos of happier times, me smiling, him smiling, our former life frozen in cheerful images. But when I looked closer, my reflection in them wasn't right. My eyes appeared hollow, my smile forced and unnatural, and behind me in every frame, a shadow crouched, small, human-shaped, just out of focus. Its glowing eyes tracked my movements. I spun around, expecting someone, something. But there was nothing. The rooms were empty, the air still. Yet the photographs had changed. My reflection had returned to normal, but the shadow remained. Always at the edge, always waiting. I began to realize the horrifying truth. This thing wasn't just haunting the house. It was learning, adapting, mimicking, growing more patient with every moment I spent in fear. It wasn't content to remain unseen. It wanted me to know it was there, to terrify me slowly, deliberately. I felt its presence wrap around me like a cold hand, brushing against my skin when I wasn't looking. Whispering in my mind words I couldn't make out, but felt in every nerve. As I tried to leave, the house resisted. Doors that I had unlocked refused to budge. The stairway seemed longer, twisted in angles that shouldn't exist. I stumbled into the living room, lights flickering, furniture shadows stretching toward me. I realized then that the house itself had become a trap. The walls weren't just walls anymore. They were eyes, ears, and claws, all waiting for the moment I finally let my guard down. I backed toward the exit, my heart hammering. But even as I reached for the doorknob, I saw it again in the corner of my eye. A figure, small, crouched, glowing eyes fixed on me. And I knew with gut-deep terror that no matter how far I ran, the presence wasn't finished with me yet. I thought leaving the house for good would end the nightmare. I signed the divorce papers, handed over the keys, and drove away, telling myself that whatever haunted those walls stayed behind. For a while, it felt like relief. I slept more than I had in months, the heavy weight lifting from my chest, replaced by cautious hope. I even started redecorating my new apartment, filling it with light, with color, with life. I told myself I was free. I told myself I could finally breathe. But the feeling didn't leave entirely. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I would wake to the faintest scent of that perfume, clinging to the corners of the room. Sometimes, I would catch a shadow moving just outside my vision, a twitch of movement too deliberate to be imagination. I tried to ignore it, to rationalize it as stress or anxiety, but deep down I knew better. The presence hadn't left. It was patient. It waited for the moment I let my guard down. Months later, I realized I had forgotten a few things in the house. Old photos, papers, small mementos. I forced myself to return, to retrieve them. The neighborhood was quiet, the sun casting soft light on familiar streets that felt foreign now. The house loomed at the end of the block, dark and silent, curtains drawn as if hiding its secrets. My heart thudded in my chest as I walked up the walkway, each step heavy with dread. I opened the front door and the familiar smell hit me instantly. Perfume, dust, and a metallic tang that made my stomach twist. The living room looked untouched, furniture in perfect order, sunlight streaming through the windows. I felt the weight immediately, a familiar pressure pressing against my chest. It was waiting, and it had not forgotten me. I moved cautiously through the house, every step measured, ears straining for the faintest whisper or movement. When I reached the bedroom, the bed caught my eye first. It was perfectly made, just as I had left it months ago, but something about it felt wrong. My pulse raced as I stepped closer. On the pillow, a note rested, written in my own handwriting. "You'll never leave." My hands shook as I stared at it. I hadn't written that. My mind screamed that it was impossible, yet the paper was real, the ink still fresh. Then I saw it in the mirror, the reflection that had haunted my nightmares. It wasn't me. It was perfect in every way, a copy of me, smiling just slightly before I did, moving just a fraction behind my own motions. Its eyes glowed faintly red, and I felt its awareness pressing into my mind. Panic seized me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, but even as I ran, I could feel it following, inside the house, in my reflection, in my mind. Wherever I went, it was there, waiting. I realized the horrifying truth. Leaving the house never meant leaving the presence. It had learned me. It had become me. And somehow, somewhere, it would always be waiting for the moment I thought I was safe.